what's caused these images? So rather than a day of devastation, a day of anger, maybe it should be a day of reflection and consideration, a day of what part did I play in having anything to do with this? This needs to be considered. Maybe the presentation that I gave, or that one of us gave of Islam, maybe it influenced that. We need to learn maybe to get a bit of a thicker skin about some things. Not to become complacent, but to get a thicker skin. I was leaving the house just the other day and a man said, "Excuse me." I thought, okay, here it comes. And he said, "Why are you wearing a dress?" No, that's fair. And I knew right then that he didn't understand the rudiments of English language. I said, a dress is contained with floral patterns. As you can see, this has no floral patterns. So he changed his line of inquiry. "Why are you wearing a long shirt?" I said, no, I was thinking, now that is better. Because it's true, it does look like a long shirt that's not tucked in. And it would be seen as slovenly or unkempt in their culture. I said, well, I'm wearing this robe because it's a fruit of faith and I'm a Muslim. He was like, oh, okay. He was fine after that. Went back to smoking his pharmaceuticals and continued on from there. Because, I don't know, maybe he thought he was tripping off of something and, I just walked in front of him and I looked like this. He could have thought that. So the moment that I answered that question, he went back to his street pharmaceuticals and went tripping in whatever he was tripping on. So we need to start to think about whether we need to have a little bit of a tougher skin. Because we do look different. We do have different dietary rules and different things like this. We do have these things, and we need to understand that. And we need to understand that not everyone's going to understand what those principles of Islam mean, what they mean to us, or their value. Sometimes people are just going to say stuff that's offensive. And we have to learn to understand when they're asking a question, but it's coming out offensive, and when someone's being condescending and actually offensive. There has to be a difference between that. Because sometimes someone just says something and it's offensive. I was going into a store the other day, and someone said to me, "Excuse me," I thought, famous last words. And he said, "Why are you wearing a towel on top of your head?" Seems fair. Now that sounds offensive, but look at him from where I am. Look at him from where I am. And look at myself from where he is. So I said, actually, I'm not wearing a towel on my head because the towels that I use at home for shower are so big, I wouldn't be able to lift my head if I wore them. So he said, okay, so what is that? I said, well, it's a turban. Have you seen any movies about the Muslim world or anything like this? He said, well, maybe a few. And I explained, well, this is what we wear. You ever heard of prophets? And I mentioned some prophets. He said, yeah, I've heard vaguely. Charlton Heston, I think, did Moses, and he's, remembering these little things. I said, yeah, well, that's how they looked, and this is how I dress because it's a fruit of my faith. It's not for salvation. It's a fruit of my faith as a symbol of the 124,000 prophets that also dressed like this from before. He's like, oh, okay. And he went to buying his pork or whatever he was going to eat or whatever. He went to get it. But the point of the matter is my skin was tough enough to where I could take that. My skin was actually tough enough. And maybe sometimes we need to bear that in mind with a little bit more maturity. Because if you're hypersensitive all the time, how can you be a witness for faith? Honestly, a guy leans out of the window of his car and he looks at me and he says, "Bin Laden." And I said, "Abu Ja'far." Because that's my name. I thought maybe that's his name. You have to learn not to be so tough-skinned, so thin-skinned about these things. Honestly. You have to learn not to be so thin-skinned. I mean, I was laughing about this because Rabbi Mordechai Betcher, he's a very famous rabbi in the United States, and he said that I got up one morning, he said, I put on my best clothes, but before then, I had a mikvah, which is a ritual purificatory bath that the Jews have, this ritual bath. And then when he gets back, He has a shower. I mean, he really bettered himself and made himself look wonderful. He put on a three-piece suit with pinstripes because it was a special event today. And so he went out. Now keep all this in mind. So he's fresh and clean. He's as clean as he can be. And a guy leans out of the window of a Toyota 4Runner and shouts, "Dirty Jew." I mean, it's shocking. But what did he do? Did he turn around? "Why, I'll have you know I had mikvah and then I had a shower." No. He's like, okay, just let him carry on. He actually found humor in it. So we need to learn to not be always just so thin-skinned about these things. Is our faith really so small, so weak, that if someone pinches us, we collapse on the floor and go into convulsions from a stroke? I hope not, because you've got a very weak immune system if that's true. You have to think about these things. The next point is kind of tied to this one, which is, who is disrespecting who? Is it that those that don't believe are disrespecting Islam, or is it that maybe we, by not presenting the faith in a cogent, understandable, workable manner, when they turn around and insult it, maybe could it be the fact that some of that bears on us as Muslims? It could be. The neighbor that we live next door to that doesn't know us. The people that live in our neighborhood, they don't know us. All these type of things that sort of feed into this idea of the other. The other. The other. I'll tell you a story about Muslims that I think feeds into this type of behavior. I was in London on Stamford Hill. Lost as usual, because I wander aimlessly in London sometimes. I didn't know where I was going. I had a Muslim guy with me. I said, I'm going to ask one of these guys for directions. He said, "Don't do that." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because they're Jewish." And I said, "Oh, all Jewish people don't know directions." "No, it's not that." "Well, what is it?" Because I'm going to ask this guy for directions. I am incredibly lost. And I stopped the guy. He had a long beard that went almost past his waist. I mean, it was like the Prophet Harun's beard. I mean, it was a beautiful beard. And this guy stopped, and he had a West Coast accent. "Oh, California, cool." So I asked him, "Listen, I'm incredibly lost." And he said, "You're not the only one." Because he looked lost as well. And I said, "I just need to find my way to Seven Sisters Road. That's all I need to do." He said, "Oh, okay, I'll tell you what to do." And he pointed out the way and everything else. And everything was fine. And this guy next to me, this Muslim next to me, thought as if somehow I'd broken some sort of law that required my immediate expulsion and destruction. Why? Because this dude was Jewish, man. Got to watch out. Why do I have to watch out, man? Well, because this guy might do something to you. What, did I not see the Kalashnikov under his jacket? Was his bazooka not present in his front breast pocket? What am I going to get from this guy? I could see if there's a man running at you with a massive weapon, you don't stop and ask him for directions, obviously. But if you're lost in Stamford Hill or Golders Green, you have to think. I need to get somewhere. It happened again when I was with a different brother, and he was of the same orientation. We're on the bus. We're in North London. It's blasting by. Woman gets on, Siddur in hand, the Jewish prayer book. She gets on. She's got her kids with her. And they're standing holding on to the bar. I'm there. She looks older than us. We're there. And I said, "Hey, let's get up and give our seats." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, because she's a lady. Everyone else has a seat. We're the only two bozos here. They're young, that look strong enough to stand up on our own. So let's stand up." "But she's Jewish." "I know, but she's still human as far as I've checked." Anyone that's bipedal and has the actual understanding and epidermis and everything else that we see, 2 ears, forehead, everything else, I think they're human. Therefore, because they're not quadrupedal, they're bipedal. Because they're not quadrupedal and bipedal, they have a right to have their seat given up to them. And so the Muslim brother was not able to separate between the actions of certain people and just the basic principles of Islam. Let me tell you something interesting. There were some converts from Judaism to Islam. There were some converts. Wahab ibn Munabbih, Ka'b ibn al-Ahbar, and Abdullah ibn Rawaha. The Muslims had just come to a new city. It was Medina. And they saw a stack of books along a trolley, a wooden trolley. These books were the Mishnah and the Gemara. These are Jewish commentary books on the Torah that date back centuries. They were in Arabic. And these new zealous believers said, let's destroy them. Let's burn them. It's not our religion. We don't believe it. Let's burn it, man. Bonfire now. What did the Prophet ﷺ say? He said, give these back to those to whom they belong. And the chief rabbi of the area was given back the books. What is this telling us? It's telling us that some of the behavior that we're displaying may be a catalyst for how people see us. Even in 1948 this happened. Man's minding his own business. He's walking down the street, Jewish man. He's in East Jerusalem. This is 48, the height of all the devastation, everything. A Muslim comes out, he's an Arab, he says, you, Jew. The Jewish guy's like, yeah, me, yeah, Jew. And he says, no, come with me. He's shocked. He's thinking, do I go with the Muslim guy? Because he's heard stories as well, stereotypes. Muslims, they eat people. And their prayer, all of their prayer is just kill Jews, kill Jews, kill Jews. Honestly, some have heard these things. And because they didn't have the exposure, they think maybe they're true. But I grew up next door to an ultra-Orthodox Jewish neighborhood. I've seen it. So I don't have sort of the proclivities that some people have. Well, anyway, this Jewish man follows this Muslim through the city, upstairs into his study, and this Jewish man's wondering, what is this guy going to do to me? Because I'm following into a house, he's shutting doors behind him, he's walking, he's got his hands in his pocket, he could be armed. He gets in, and he finds this huge, I mean, it looks almost like a curtain. And he pulls an actual piece of sheeting off of it. And he steps forward in front of the Jewish man, and he says, you know, I almost missed getting this, and it almost got burned. And he unrolled it, and it was a complete Torah scroll that is normally read in the synagogue. The Jewish guy was dumbfounded. This guy, Muslim, he thinks, maybe, that some of the Jews are stealing his home and everything else, and he saves the Torah scroll. He doesn't even believe that the Muslims really don't have an understanding of the Torah that exists today being the original Torah, but he still saved it. Why? Because our faith, it's not a personal vendetta. It's nothing personal. We don't believe in Judaism or Christianity, okay? But that's nothing personal. And this is something we have to understand. Because sometimes we take things personally to the point where it becomes nasty and it becomes evil. And we have to really start to look at ourselves and make the separation between the man running at you with a bazooka and the man that's in Stamford Hill or the lady that's in Stamford Hill or Golders Green. We need to make that differentiation. We might not believe or accept the religion of either of them. But the point of the matter is this, is that we have to differentiate. The next thing I want us to understand is this. We have a number of problems, again, because my advice is still to the Muslims. We have a number of difficulties with regards to some double standards that we let take place. I'll say that again. We have a number of difficulties with regards to some double standards that we allow. Yes, those cartoons were bad. They were not good. It was awful. But we've also got some double standards. And I want to address those double standards because I want us to really have some open speech and dialogue. Muslims that saw the cartoons, some of them would say, this is a reinforcement of old stereotypes about Muslims as well. About Muslims, about Arabs, about Muslim culture,